But we got winemaker and wine grower Bill Nachbaur from Acorn Winery with us on the phone. Bill, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Mike. Nice to be here.
Glad that you could make it. Now, tell us a little bit about, I understand that you guys have been doing this for quite a while, at least something like 19 years on this trail.
Yeah, we've done the barrel tasting with the Wine Road for I think it's 19 years. We've been growing grapes and making wine for almost 30. This will be our 30th harvest coming up.
Mm-hmm. And I want to get into your wines in a little bit because it's a really fascinating story. But tell me, over the last 19 years or so of you doing the wine trail, what have you noticed as far as, say, the average wine lover? I know there's a lot more out there these days, but have you seen any just observations that, from a guy that's sitting there with a bunch of wine?
Well, we got a lot of people who are very interested in wine and, that are going from winery to learn about wine and to learn. It's kind of interesting to see how wine evolves, and you get to taste some pretty young wine this way and kind of get an idea of how it's going to develop. Mm-hmm.
What part of the region are you in? There's Russian River, there's Dry Creek, and there's Alexander Valley. Where's your spot?
We're in the Russian River Valley, but we're at the north end of that appellation, so we're pretty close to Healdsburg.
Okay.
So Russian River, Dry Creek, and Alexander Valley all come together at Healdsburg.
I gotcha.
But we're Russian River is the coolest climate of the three, so you'll see a lot of Pinot Noir, and our wines have kind of a cool climate character.
Exactly. Well, one of the things that we like to talk about here on the show is everybody kind of has a dream to do something, and not everybody gets a chance to do it, but I always encourage folks to never give up on their dream, and don't give up on your day job just yet. But tell us a little bit about what you were doing before you got into the wine industry. What was your career?
Well, actually, I was a lawyer for about 16 years before I switched over to this, and I had a pretty varied career. I went to law school in Berkeley, and then went back to Washington D.C. as a Vista volunteer, and then worked for the government, for the Federal Home Loan Bank Board and the House Banking Committee and Bank of America, and I ended up general counsel of a small credit card company. Mm-hmm. And then the company got sold, and I got a little money to go away, and I was kind of tired of being a lawyer and very interested in wine, and started taking viticulture classes at Santa Rosa Junior College and looking for some property.
Mm-hmm. Did you end up at Davis at all?
Just a couple of weekends. But the Santa Rosa program was very good and very detailed, and I found that going to Davis, I was kind of hearing things I'd already heard.
Right.
So it was a good program. It was mostly about the grape growing. I was originally just going to grow grapes, and I didn't think that I was going to make wine, mm-hmm. Or not to sell anyway. So that kind of came later. And by the time I decided I was going to make wine, I was already selling grapes to other wineries, so I had winemakers I could talk to. And,
yeah.
I learned kind of on the job.
That's great. Nothing like a bunch of comrades that are already doing what you're doing as well.
Yeah, and it's a very cooperative industry. It's everybody's competitive, but willing to share ideas and even equipment.
Yeah, I've noticed that a lot in the wine industry, especially on the wine trails, where you'll end up being at a place and really enjoying it and say, where should I go next? And the winemaker never hesitates to tell you a number of his friends or her friends to go down the road and try their wines.
Yeah, we do that all the time. We're very happy to send people on to visit our neighbors.
Absolutely.
And it works both ways.
Absolutely. Well, you brought up an interesting thing, and I want to touch on this for a minute, because a lot of folks have a vision that, the winemaker also is the grape grower. But as you started out, you were just a grape grower, not just, but you were a grape grower that sold your grapes, obviously, to winemakers. But don't you sort of feel like both of those disciplines are so separate and so unique that, it's almost two separate industries? I mean, to grow really good grapes, you have to really focus on being a good farmer. Yes. Winemaking is another process altogether.
Well, I think it helps to do both, because you learn what a winemaker is looking for, and there's a common expression that most winemakers agree with, that the wine's made in the vineyard. You can't make great wine unless you have great grapes. You can screw it up, but you have to start with great grapes. So, and we still sell about half the grapes we grow to other wineries, and I think it helps me be a better grape grower for them to also be making wine.
Yeah, it's so different too. I mean, different now that there's so many younger people getting involved in winemaking, and I noticed there's sort of this confluence of tradition, like old world tradition, versus sort of new philosophies on winemaking and what makes a good wine. And like you've seen the whole Chardonnay trend go from really oaky and buttery and sort of fat, if you will, to a way more lean, higher acidity kind of almost European style.
Yes.
So,
and I think there's a market for both styles, but but there's definitely been a trend away from the buttery, oaky ones.
Yep. Yeah, that's for sure. Yeah, the 70s are well behind us, right?
I guess so.
Well, listen.
I'd like to go back. So.
Yeah, right. Yeah, no question. So one of the fascinating things I want to share with folks out there, and I really encourage you guys to go and see Bill and his wife there at Acorn. But you specialize in what you call field blended wines, and I love telling people stories about field blends, because really that's where wine began back in the day. I mean, you'd pick what you got and you just make a big batch of wine, and it was never predictable. And but tell us a little bit about your field blend. I'm sure you take a different approach.
What we mean by field blends is that we have different varieties interplanted in the same vineyard, and more important than the fact that they're growing together, we pick them together and they go into the fermenter together, so that they interact right from the day they're picked. And we were inspired to do that by the old vineyard that was here when we got here, that was already 100 years old. And as you say, the old-fashioned way of planting a vineyard was to plant a lot of different varieties that ripened about the same time, with the idea of picking them all together. And to us, it's sort of like making a stew. If you want to make a really good stew, you want all the ingredients to interact right from the beginning. You wouldn't cook the meat in one pot and potatoes in another and onions in another and carrots in another and mix them up on the way to the table.
Right.
So we think it really makes the wine more complex and interesting to have the grapes interacting right from the beginning.
Right. That's a great philosophy. Well, because it's a vastly different than, say, a blended red, as an example, where you make a batch of Merlot, a batch of Cab, a batch of Petit Verdot, and you sort of blend them in measured amounts until you get the right sort of thing that you're looking for. Whereas this is what they call co-fermented, right? As you say, you pick it all at the same time. Yep.
Right. So they're interacting right from the start, and you can certainly make good wine by doing it the other way, but that puts more emphasis on the wine making versus the wine growing, I think. But our Zinfandel vineyard, for example, has it's only 78% Zinfandel, and there's a lot of Petit Syrah and Alicante Boucher, which is a very interesting red-fleshed variety, and then the last 2% is 15 other grapes sprinkled around like seasoning. It's just salt and pepper. So it, you wouldn't think, 1% of something would make a difference, but it definitely does.
That's great. Now, what's the name of that blend again?
Well, that's our Heritage Fine Zinfandel.
Beautiful.
That's one of the wines we'll be pouring this week as futures. So we'll be offering futures on that and our our Syrah, which is co-fermented with Viognier. So
yeah, I was just looking here at the Acorn Hill blend, the field blend. It's 49 Syrah, 49 Sangiovese, and 1% Viognier. I really like that. I've had not a lot of experience with it, but the Viognier, which is a white grape, by the way, for all you guys out there listening, but to throw a little bit of that into a big, bold red, just, I don't know, it takes the edge off. It's really a nice combo.
Yeah, and it's not something we invented, but it's something that's been done for a long time in the Rhone Valley in Côte Rôtie, and it adds some aroma and smooths out the wine, and it actually, you wouldn't think so, but it actually stabilizes the color. There's something in the Viognier that binds with the color in the Syrah and makes it more stable.
Interesting. Yeah, that's very interesting. Well, listen, I am looking forward to getting into some of your barrels there. What is when you mentioned your Zinfandel that you're going to be selling futures on, how many cases are you predicting that you're going to be able to put out? Roughly.
I think that'll be about 300.
Oh, okay. So it's still a pretty small run.
Oh, it's a very small run. Yeah. So all of our lots are pretty small.
Well,
and every wine we make is made from grapes we grow.
Well, I'm looking forward to this. What's the so what's your prediction on bud break? Is it just around the corner? I got a feeling it's going to be soon, as soon as we get some sunshine for 3 days in a row.
By mid-March, usually by St. Patrick's Day, we see the Sangiovese get started, and then the others are not too far behind. So right. I think that's probably about where we'll be this year.
Good. Well, I'm looking forward to that. All right. Well, listen, I want to see you out there at the barrel with your wine thief in hand, and I will have a couple of glasses and some friends with me.
Okay. Well, I look forward to seeing you, and we invite lots of people to come. We're a very small winery that's only open usually by appointment, and so it's an opportunity to come in and for us to see a lot more people. And the weather's clear right now, so we're hoping it's not going to be too wet this weekend.
I agree. Okay. Well, acornwinery.com is where you can find more about Bill and the Acorn Winery varietals that he's got in his field blends. It's a pretty fascinating website. So hopefully see you guys out there. Bill, thanks so much. I appreciate your time, and we'll see you on the trail.
Great, Mike. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. All right, everybody, stick around.
Great, Mike. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. All right, everybody, stick around.
Great, Mike.